Good morning, everyone. I am happy to be part of this 3-day Division online training workshop on the development and quality assurance of instructional materials on Bicol culture. The topic assigned to me is contextualization of curriculum materials. This session will make us look at contextualization closely and its place in instruction. There shall also be a discussion on translation due to its often use in the contextualization of the materials coming from the central and regional office. At the end of this session, it is expected that you will be able to explain the relationship and differences among the terms contextualization, localization, and indigenization. We will also be able to tell how contextualization is actualized in the K-12 curriculum and discuss the various ways contextualization can be done in the K-12 curriculum. To start with our session, may I request everyone to kindly get a pen and a paper. We will do the deal or no deal bonus activity. Now, each of you will respond to a statement that will be flashed. Write deal if you agree fully with the statement or no deal if you don't. For bonus questions, kindly provide your answer. Local communities have a key role in shaping education programs, projects, and interventions. Is it a deal or no deal? Number two, what Republic Act highlights the need to adapt education programs, projects, and initiatives to fit local needs? Kindly write your answer. Number three, contextualization responds to the diversity of learners. Is it a deal or no deal? Number four, contextualization and indigenization are related processes. Is it a deal or no deal? Number five, what Republic Act highlights the standards and principles in developing the enhanced basic education curriculum that DepEd should adhere to? Write your answer. Number six, localization means translation of materials to local language. Is it a deal or no deal? Number seven, the flexibility of the K-12 curriculum does not provide for contextualization. Is it a deal or no deal? Number eight, one of the principles and standards of the K-12 curriculum is its being contextualized. Is it a deal or no deal? Number nine, in what level should localizing and indigenizing the curriculum be done? Kindly write your answer. Number 10, DepEd should adhere to the principles and framework of MTB-MLE in developing the enhanced basic education curriculum. Is it a deal or no deal? At this point, may I request you to kindly leave your answers for a while? We will go back to those answers later. Now, I would like to request you to journey with me in the world of contextualization. One of the policies used as basis for the contextualization of the curriculum is Republic Act 9155, or known as the Governance of Basic Education Act of 2001. Section 2 of this Republic Act encouraged local initiatives for improving the quality of basic education by reflecting the values, needs, and aspirations of a school community in the program of education. It is also stated in Section 2 of this Republic Act that schools and learning centers are given the authority or power to make program of education on what is best for the learners they serve. Another policy used is DepEd Order Number 43 Series 2013, or better known as the Implementing Rules and Regulations of Republic Act 10533, known as the Enhanced Basic Education Act of 2013. Stipulated in this act are the standards and principles in the development of the enhanced basic education curriculum, one of which is contextualized and global. Some people believe that if we go contextualization, we cannot go global. It is important that we need to look into the interaction and integration among people, companies, or various social groups in different social contexts. Global issues and concerns manifest differently given local dynamics and realities, and are experienced and responded to in the local setting. Another standard and principle in developing the enhanced curriculum is its being flexible. This allows schools to localize, indigenize, and enhance the curriculum based on their educational and social context. Both Republic Act 9155 and RA 10533 stress the importance of the local level, requiring the need to understand the local context. So based on the policy basis, what are the key concepts that we got from them? The key concepts are contextualization, localization, and indigenization. What is contextualization? Contextualization is an act or process of putting information into context, making sense of information from the situation or location in which the information was found. In the context of the curriculum, contextualization refers to the educational process of relating the K-12 curriculum to a particular setting, situation, or area of application to make the competencies meaningful, relevant, and useful to all learners. There are two degrees of contextualization. First, we have localization and indigenization. Let us take a look at localization. What is it? Localization is the process of adapting and relating the content of the curriculum and the process of teaching and learning to local condition, environment, and resources. How do we contextualize using the degree of localization? First, examples used in lessons start with those in the locality. When we start our lesson, we usually bank on the experiences of the learners, what they know about topics or things related to the lesson. Second, name, situation, setting needed to give context to test questions or problem-solving exercises are those of the immediate community. Situations that we relay to the learners during our lessons are within their context. The names we use are the names commonly heard in the community. And at this point, we no longer see names of objects or animals which are not familiar to the learners. The next is that local materials are used as often as possible in making instructional materials. Most often, teachers nowadays make use of realia or real objects in their lessons. Materials, for example, for arts, are commonly found in the community. Stories which were told by our elders, are often used in the mother tongue, Filipino, and in English. Another way of contextualizing through the degree of localization is translating a story written in another language to the language of one's learners for use in MTB-MLE. Most often, teachers contextualize the stories into the learner's mother tongue due to scarcity of supply. I remember in Pili West District, we were able to write 53 original stories in the mother tongue, and 2 stories were contextualized. We thought of doing this because Teachers in the mother tongue are having lack of supply to use in their language lessons. I remember also that I have 4 versions already of my story, Tina the Ant. First version is in English, then Filipino, Central Bicol, and Rinconada. I designed this in order for the learners to be helped in the bridging of the languages. Now, in the things that we talked about, localization, we see now that localization is tapping what learners do, know, feel, and experience. Things learners do and associated with them are the learning that lasts forever. Now, let us go to the next degree, which is indigenization. Indigenization refers to the process of enhancing the curriculum competencies, education resources, and teaching learning process in relation to the biogeographical, historical, and sociocultural context of the learner's community. Indigenization may also involve the enhancement of the curriculum framework, curriculum design, and learning standards of subjects guided by the standards and principles adhered to by the national curriculum. In indigenization, students acquire in-depth knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes through continuity and consistency across all levels and subjects. Discussions on issues like disaster risk reduction, climate change, and information and communication technology are included in the enhanced curriculum. This slide is showing you how the design and content can be enhanced in relation to the sociocultural background of learners. Example given in here is the music and art grade level standards for 4 to 6 and grade 7. We can also see the relation of the design to the sociocultural background of learners in MTB-MLE in the Key Stage 1 or K to 3. The design and discussion from the worldview, philosophy, and spirituality of the community itself shows indigenization of the curriculum. Another proof of indigenization are the competencies being placed in the curriculum to guide the discussion of additional religions or belief systems. Furthermore, competencies are placed to guide the learner's understanding of the histories and interrelationships of various Christian churches. So from the examples given to show indigenization, this is connecting the design, the relationship, showing you the relationship of the sociocultural background of the learners in the design and um, content of our curriculum. I have here an example of a content standard that shows indigenization of the curriculum to understand and appreciate the elements and context of 21st century Philippine literature from the regions. The discussion in this starts with the region where the school is located. Then we go to the neighboring regions and then to the other regions. We should also consider the authors of various ethnicities in the region in the selections or the text to be used in this. Now, this slide is showing you the 4 key stages in the K-12 curriculum. I like you to look at MTB-MLE and the senior high school. These two are placed in here to respond to the learner's context during the foundational years in K-3 and senior high school to respond to the community context. Indigenization came in to the MTB-MLE to address the sociocultural need of the learners. MTB-MLE also is designed to develop cognitive and reasoning skills among the early graders. Not only that, but also to operate equally in all the languages and preserve the Philippines' cultural treasure. Sample of indigenization of the curriculum for the junior high school is the TLE, which is leading to TBL options. The design and content of this subject considered the areas of application. This is in relation to the interests and skills of learners, and setting. This is in relation to the resources available. Indigenization is also evident in the tracks and strands in the senior high school. It looked into the context of the community. Because the learning areas in the K-12 curriculum recognize the unique and varying geographical and sociocultural contexts of the Philippines, the influence of contextualization in the day-to-day teaching learning process is evident. Indigenization is also evident in the different inclusion and interest programs of the Department of Education. Here are the inclusion programs of the Department of Education. Indigenous Peoples Education Program is a response to the collective aspirations of communities for self-determination and the recognition, promotion, and protection of their rights. Madrasa program is in response to the needs of the out-of-school youth, Filipino Muslim children, youth, adults, and women. In this, they must be able to learn life skills and work values and pursue their education despite their prevailing circumstances. Special education programs are also intended to learners who are gifted and talented, as well as to the learners with disabilities. Children who are in armed conflict areas and others who are under difficult circumstances are being addressed by ALS and alternative delivery mode so that they will continue their education despite of their situation too. In the next slides, I will be giving you some examples of localization and indigenization of curriculum. First is the curriculum design for the National Kindergarten Curriculum Guide. Localization is part of this curriculum design through the use of local information and materials while maintaining the suggested structure, themes, and activities in the NKCG. And indigenization came in when there was the enhancing of themes and activities of the NKCG through the modification, reorganization, and the highlighting of certain aspects in relation to the community context. Here, I'm going to show you Araling Panlipunan, which addresses the biogeographical, historical, and sociocultural context of the learners. Let us look at the themes. For grade 1, we start with Ako, ang aking pamilya, at paaralan. And in grade 6, mga hamon at tugon sa pagkabansa. So this shows that there is a spiral progression in Araling Panlipunan because we start only with a small unit in the society and go to the bigger area or the big unit in the society. Another example is in math, with the competency visualize the ratio of two given numbers. For localization, it is using observable examples of ratio in the community, like for example, one jeep four wheels, one kariton two wheels, or one motorcycle two wheels, depending on what is most common in the community. Indigenization came in when there was the discussion of the community activities or cultural practices that inherently use the concept of ratio. Example, bringing products to the market entails using a carabao carrying sacks. So for the ratio, we can say one carabao is to blank sacks, or we can say one carabao is to 20 sacks. Another example is in science. The competency is identify star patterns that can be seen at particular times of the year. For localization, use the community's name for prominent stars, if they have, while retaining the use of the Greek constellations in its background in discussing star patterns. I remember my mom, she was pointing to me one of the patterns there, and she said like, oh, that we call that tabo. That's the Big Dipper, kumbaga. Okay, for context, indigenization naman po. Indigenization came in when there was the discussion of the community's own calendar of star patterns and its background before discussing the Greek constellations. Another example is for the subject area edukasyon sa pagpapakatao. Dito makikita natin yung nangyari doon sa ginawa nating DCCM. Sa unang markahan, ang national competence ay naipapakita ang natatanging kakayahan. Halimbawa, talentong ibinigay ng Diyos. Kung sa atin, sa level natin sa community, we can have a competence na nakasasayaw ng pantomina. So very specific po siya. Another is for the ikalawang markahan. National competence, nakapagpapakita ng may kasiyahan sa pakikiisa sa mga gawaing pambata. Tingnan natin ang community competence, na paghihiwalay ang mga malalaki at maliit na isda. Ito ay inilagay dahil ang komunidad nila ay malapit sa palaisdaan. So in the K-12 framework, we have the subject, standards, and learning competencies that can be contextualized using the areas of contextualization or the degrees of contextualization, which are localization and indigenization. Now, these two are used in order for us to have what we call contextualized instruction. We contextualize instruction. When we contextualize it, we also contextualize the objectives, procedures, assessment, and assignment. These are influenced by our standard competencies, where the learners are, what do they know, what can they do, what are their intelligence, their interest, and learning styles. And also, it is also influenced by core values and future career. Now, there are several steps in curriculum localization process. First, we assess local needs. We need to look into the level of our children. After we assess the local needs, then we review the learning standards. After reviewing our learning standards, we contextualize also or localize the content. Then after localization or localizing the content, we looked into the pedagogical approaches and strategies. We need to look into the kind of strategies or approaches that we will use in accordance to the capability and interest of the children. So for example, if our children are struggling readers or struggling learners, for me, if you will ask me, explicit teaching is the best strategy for them. Next step is identifying the use of local resources and materials. So we now look into what are the available materials in the community in order to achieve the learning standards that learners should be able to have at the end of the grading period or at the end of a grade level period. The next step is localizing assessment strategies. If we localize the pedagogical approaches, we also need to localize the assessment strategies. It should also be at the level of the children. So we have diverse learners, so our learning or our assessment strategy should not be the same to all. So it must also address the diversity of our learners. And the last one is that we integrate these local curriculum elements in the learning standards. So all of these steps will be done in collaboration with the administrators, teachers, students, and community. After doing the seven steps, we can now say that we are now ready for the contextualized teaching and learning. CTL engages students in active learning while assisting them to make meaning out of the information they are obtaining. Contextualized instruction links the learning of foundational skills with academic or occupational content by focusing teaching and learning squarely on concrete applications in a specific context that is of interest to the students. Many people learn better and faster and retain information longer when they are taught concepts in context. So let's take a look at curriculum contextualization. What is it? It is the process of enhancing our national curriculum. And why should we do this? In order for our curriculum to be culturally responsive. And how? Through the use of local learning systems with local content, language resources, and learning processes. These are to achieve the goal of having learners improve performance, develop positive behavior, pride in one's culture and heritage, and strong social commitment. Let me reiterate, contextualized teaching and learning would make learning more meaningful and relevant to the lives of students outside of school and engages and motivates hard-to-reach students and increases learners' confidence and enthusiasm. Now let us review contextualization. The curriculum design of subjects and learning standards are based on the principles and standards in the design of the K-12 curriculum. And there are group of instructional strategies which comprises the competencies, teaching learning process, learning environment, and learning resources. We also need to bear in mind that contextualization is present in all the subject areas and even in the inclusion and interest programs for kindergarten to grade 12. These programs cater to learners' varied cultural backgrounds, abilities, and interests. We also need to remember that contextualization is also guided by the principles of being learner-centered and inclusive, recognizing diversity. The extent of contextualizing depends on factors. For example, familiarity of the teacher with the community, the background of the learners in one's class, the setting, and the situation of the community. Because of these factors, we were able to have different curriculum or different curricula. So we say we have diversity of curricula. Diversity of curricula are aligned nationwide by the principles and standards of the K-12 curriculum. We need to remember when we do contextualization that content and performance standards should not be compromised in the contextualization of our curriculum. Contextualization is possible in all subject areas, in all grade levels, but not all. You need to remember, but not all competencies can be contextualized. Contextualization can be done across the learning areas, but it would take a lot of planning and good skill. We also have to remember that contextualizing a lesson should not be confined only to the local culture icons, but beyond, which is within the schema of the learners. The major curriculum thrust of K-12 is contextualization, bearing in mind that localization and indigenization are degrees or levels of doing contextualization. We also have to remember that when we localize, we do not necessarily indigenize, but when we indigenize, we localize. In the contextualization process, dialogue and community engagement mechanisms with the communities were established for the purpose of contextualized education. These were done through immersion in communities, collaboration with elders, and formulation of cultural standards. Situation analysis led to community vision, mission, and goals for education, thus the formulation of the contextualized framework. Now let's take a look at this contextualized framework. Our K-12 curriculum is composed of the different learning areas, domain standards, and competencies. And these were framed on the different contexts, which are the things that we looked into during the degree of localization and indigenization. Now, all of these contexts were the basis of our for the development of our local heritage matrix and our contextualized curriculum matrix. If you will recall in the example, in the edukasyon sa pagpapakatao, we have um, a sample or a national competence, and then after looking into the national competence, there was a design community competence depending on the kind of community we have or the learners have. So those competencies are found in the contextualized curriculum matrix. We looked into, or we have this local heritage matrix for us to see what is in our community and can be incorporated in our lessons. Thus, with these two, we were able to have contextualized teaching and learning. Learning spaces and environment were also looked into. Also, the instructional procedures, the assessments, and learning resources were developed and utilized in line with the contextualized curriculum content and processes, thus providing us guide in the contextualization of the curriculum at the school level. Republic Act 9155 and 10533 were the basis of contextualization. Contextualization of curriculum materials needs careful and educational planning and capacity development among those who will be involved in this activity. Context-appropriate supervision is needed, which can be provided by knowledgeable persons through the help of the LRMDS or the Learning Resources Management and Development System. Contextualized school governance supports the process, and the monitoring and evaluation is also present in the process for the purpose of tracking the implementation and output systematically and measure the effectiveness of programs. It helps determine exactly when a program is on track and when changes may be needed. Collaboration is imminent in the contextualization process for the being and becoming a whole person of the learner, a learner who has improved performance, developed positive behavior, pride in one's culture, heritage, and strong social commitment. Let us remember that contextualization is not just translating the text into the language of the community, but rather it is the process of assigning meaning as a means of interpreting the environment within which a text or action is executed. Translating is only a part of one of the degrees of contextualization. So, what is translation? Translation is the judicious blending of the two modes of phrasing, metaphrase, which is literal translation, and paraphrase, when selecting in the target language, counterparts or equivalents for the expressions used in the source of language. Why am I discussing this with you? Because most oftentimes when we receive materials from the central office and from the regional office, we usually do translation. We translate the materials into our own language. And how shall we know that we have a good translation of the materials? What are the characteristics of this? First, it must be clear. Clear means when people read the translation, it makes sense to them. They are able to understand each thought. Second is accurate. When the original author wrote the original book, he or she wanted to communicate specific ideas to a specific group of readers. A good translation communicates the same ideas only to a different group of readers. New ideas are not added and none of the original ideas are removed. The third characteristic is natural. Local readers find the translation easy to read because it is in style that is familiar to them. Pag sinabi nating familiar, ay ito yung tamang conversational manner of speaking natin. Paminsan or karamihang pagkakataon, ang nakikita ko ay gumagamit ang karamihan ng si, nauuna yung si. Halimbawa, si nanay nagduman sa saod. In our Central Bicol, we do not use that. That's not familiar and that is quite awkward because for Central Bicol, we are using the di karaniwang anyo ng pangungusap. Kaya we say, nagduman si nanay sa saod. So we always start with the verb. So if we do that, medyo pag binasa yan ng mga local readers, medyo parang may sumasabit sa dila ng tao. Kaya uulitin mo ulit na basahin. Pero kung ang pagkakasulat mo or pagkakatranslate mo ay nasa tamang gamit or paraan, yung palaging ginagamit sa conversation natin, then your contextualization or your translation has a natural flow. So the things that we have to remember in translating or contextualizing, we need to communicate the ideas, information from the original text into the target language. We do not use the same word order that were in the original, and it should be clear, accurate, and natural. Here are some types of translation or contextualization. Number one is word-for-word translation. The translator or the contextualizer concentrate only on translating each word or phrase into other language and give less attention to the overall meaning of the text. For example, we want to know how children learn math. For word, it is, kita gusto maaraman paano mga aki makanood math. So it sounds like Baroque. Another example, flowers are love's truest language. In our word-for-word translation, it will be, mga burak sa pagkamuot, pinakatunay, lengguwahe. The next type is dynamic translation. The translator or the contextualizer concentrate on translating the ideas and information from the original so that the same message is communicated and the translation makes sense to the new reader. Example, we want to know how children learn math. We say, gusto tang maaraman kung paano nakakanood nin math ang mga aki. Or, gusto tang maaraman kung paano nakakanood ang mga aki ning math. Another type is adaptations. The translators, contextualizers, keep the original ideas and information but change the way in which they are presented. So the translator may simplify the story or make it more complex or change it entirely. They may even change the format in which the ideas and information are presented. The fourth type is literal. The grammar structure of the original language is translated into its nearest equivalent in the target language. The words are translated outside of context. For example, flowers are love's truest language. In literal, we say, ang mga burak sa pagkamuot pinakatunay na lengguwahe. The fifth type is faithful or matapat. A faithful translation is trying to make an exact contextualized meaning of the original text within the grammatical structure of the target language. Example, for the same text, in faithful, we translate this into ang pagtaunin burak, ang pinakatunay na pagpapahiling nin pagkamuot. The sixth type is the semantic. This focuses on the importance of aesthetic or the beauty and natural sound of the text of the original language and avoids unpleasant redundancy of words or syllable in the target language. For example, with the same text, we say it this in semantic, pinakaliputok na pagpapahiling nin pagkamuot ang pagtao nin burak. The seventh type is communicative or comunicativo. This attempts to translate the exact contextualized meaning of the original text into an acceptable language and can easily be understood by the target language. For example, with the same text, flowers are love's truest language, we say this, pinakatunay na pagpapahiling ning pagkamuot ang pagtatao nin burak. May I also give you some guide questions when you do translation or contextualization? First question, what is the main point that the author is trying to communicate in this material? Second, what format did the author use to communicate the main point? Is it in a story format, poem format, or in a direction format? The third question is, can we use the same format for the intended reader? Will people in our language want to read a story or booklet? And do you think we will be able to translate it with clarity and accuracy and in natural form? Ito ay magagawa natin, yung clarity, accuracy, and in natural form. Magagawa po natin ito kung kami ang tatanungin or ako ang tatanungin ninyo base sa aking experience. Nagagawa ko ang clarity, accuracy, and if it's in natural form, kung pagkatapos kong mag-contextualize ay ibinibigay ko ito sa kapwa ko contextualizer at pinapabasa ko ito. Lahat kami sa grupo namin sa mother tongue, kami ay nag-exchange at nag-uukrayan ng lahat ng ginawa para mas mapabuti yung aming mga material. Minsan sa accuracy of words, dito kami nagkakaproblema. Halimbawa, may mga salita kasi tayo na iba ang ibig sabihin sa ibang lugar. So, hinahanap dito yung commonality sa buong lugar. Halimbawa, ang hirap hanapan ng equivalent sa Central Bicol yung salitang kawat. Kasi sa Sorsogon, ang kawat iba ang ibig sabihin yan. Yan ay pagnanakaw. So, sabi namin, ang hirap naman, wala na tayong ibang word na magagamit pa. So, ang ginawa po namin, nilagay namin ito sa parang glosaryo or glossary para yon ay i-refer ng mga teachers ng mga Sorsoganon na ang kawat is paglalaro or laro. Sometimes, meron din akong nasulat noon na ang nailagay ko ay bubo. Kasi nagbububo ay nagdidilig ng tanim. So, syempre, ang term natin sa Central Bicol ay bubo. Hindi naman po pwedeng sabihin nating baribi because ang baribi ay kakaunti yan na sprinkle ng water. So, nung pinabasa ko yon doon sa Taga-Legazpi, tawa siya ng tawa dahil yung bubo pala sa kanila ay iba ang ibig sabihin. Yan yung organ ng babae sa English ay sa Legazpi. So, kailangan doon sa accuracy, titingnan din natin, ito ba ang akmang salita or akmang salita doon sa lugar, doon sa paggagamitan natin ng ating material. So now that we're done with our discussion, let us go back to your answers. Let us check our answers in the deal or no deal bonus activity. Local communities have a key role in shaping education programs, projects, and interventions. Deal or no deal? The answer is deal. Number 2, for the bonus question, what Republic Act highlights the need to adapt education programs, projects, and initiatives to fit local needs? Answer? Yes, Republic Act 9155. Next number, contextualization responds to the diversity of learners. Deal or no deal? The answer is deal. Next item. Contextualization and indigenization are related processes. Deal or no deal? Answer is deal. For our bonus question, what Republic Act highlights the standards and principles in developing the enhanced basic education curriculum that DepEd should adhere to? Answer is yes, Republic Act 10533. Okay, next item. Localization means translation of materials to local language. Deal or no deal? The answer is no deal, because localization is not only on translation of the materials to local language. Next, the flexibility of the K-12 curriculum does not provide for contextualization. Deal or no deal? The answer is no deal. Why? What makes the statement mali? Because of the word does not. Because the flexibility of the K-12 curriculum provides for contextualization. Next number, one of the principles and standards of the K-12 curriculum is its being contextualized. Deal or no deal? Yes, the answer is deal. For the bonus question, in what level should localizing and indigenizing the curriculum be done? Answer is in the school level. Now for the last item, DepEd should adhere to the principles and framework of MTB-MLE in developing the enhanced basic education curriculum. Deal or no deal? The answer is deal. Kumusta po ang result natin? Pakibilang nga po. How did you fare in our deal or no deal bonus activity? For those who got 8 to 10, congratulations to everyone. Before I end my session, I'd like to share these words with you. The concept of contextualization falls on the idea that learners learn best when experiences in the classroom have meanings and relevance in their lives. Thank you so much for making me a part of this training workshop. I'd like to say good luck everyone and be safe.